Yeah. All right. The recording started. People are joining us. Mm, all right. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Wandry, and I am Associate State Director of Outreach and Advocacy for AARP in Houston. Um, thank you. And we're happy you're here. It is Monday, so thank you so much for spending your Monday with us. Um, just so you know, and I'm sure you're familiar, AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan social mission organization that advocates for older adults to choose how they live as they age. And we do that through programming, events, resources, and local advocacy. So today we are doing our Mindful Monday series, and this is our second to last. Next one will be our last one for the year. So yeah, so make sure you stay tuned. So I'll let Melissa take it away.
All right, fantastic. I'm gonna pin myself. So welcome everyone. I've got a little something going on with my voice, but I feel great today and I feel so privileged to be here with each and every one of you. I have put into the chat box my email address and also my website. So if you want to send me a request to send you the videos, I will do that. If you attended 2 weeks ago, I have not yet sent out the video on grief. I'm a little bit getting caught up, so I will do that. If you send me an email, I'll send you all the links to all the videos of this entire series that we've done together. Um, I'm super excited that you're here. Please, if you're willing, go ahead and add into the chat box what your name is and where you're zooming in from. We would love to just acknowledge you. And I would encourage you, as I always do with each of my sessions, that you stay engaged in some way. So, part of being present and taking time to do this today would mean creating some personal boundaries. So maybe you close your door, maybe you turn off your phone, maybe you get a pen and paper so you can jot down a few things because sometimes, right, we go away and we come back and we go, what is that I just did for an hour? Um, so I would love for you to stay engaged. Please, because we are in the webinar version today, feel free to type into the chat box. That's probably the best way to communicate today. Any questions as we go along. Also, any reflections that you might have about our session, how the experience is for you, how of the practical aspects of what we're participating in today. As Jennifer said, and thank you, Jennifer, for the lovely welcome. I'm a clinical mental health provider in the state of New Mexico, but I am a Texan and had a long relationship with AARP Texas, and I feel so grateful to be able here to share a little bit about burnout today and how we can prevent it. I would be curious to hear in the chat box how many of you think you have burnout or are verging on burnout, or maybe what your biggest question is today about burnout. And I would love to address those. So if you're willing, you can chat in the chat box. Someone said verging. Yeah, I hear you. I can feel myself on the verge. Yep, I have burnout. Okay. You're in the right place. I need to learn how to not let it go any further. Yep, exactly. And that is what I hope we accomplish today. So, our menu for today, we are going to sprinkle in some mindfulness and why I think those skills are so incredibly powerful. Mindfulness is a way for us to create and add to our toolbox of emotional intelligence so that when something happens, we have the capacity to hit the pause button when we become aware of something, a situation, a circumstance, anything, could even be something in our own body, a physiological response, rather than react. And when we respond, we're doing so with non judgment, we're doing so with a sense of embodiment, and we're doing so with a sense of present moment awareness. And so those are all sometimes tall orders because we are human. We have a bias toward negative cognition because we're human. We have a tendency to judge things. So if we can kind of step back just a little bit and give ourselves just enough space to have responses rather than reactions, that can diminish our stress um, by exponential forms. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. A lot of you have typed in how to recover from burnout. How do I do that? I've definitely reached burnout. I can feel the negative effects when the smallest things happen. So, we're going to get into, we're going to start with a little bit of a mindfulness exercise. We'll get into the nitty gritty of defining some of these things. And I feel that's really important because it helps you assess actually and accurately where you are in this moment. And then we're going to look at what we can do about it and continue to provide some skills for that. Um, all right, let's dive in. So let's take our first mindfulness exercise, which is basically feeling a sense of groundedness. So I do make some assumptions about accessibility, and that means that you have access to hands and feet or that you can feel them. If you experience neuropathy, which is numbness in hands or feet, feel free to substitute a different part of your body. So if I say hands, you could use shoulders. If I say feet, you could use your seat. So there's a lot of different ways in which you can adjust anything that I offer you. So I'll invite you to do that. So in this moment, drop your attention or your awareness to the lowest part of your body that you can feel. So if you can feel your toes, wiggle your toes. If you can feel what you're sitting on, if you're sitting or if you're standing, what is the lowest part of the body that you can actually feel or experience? So in other words, I'm not asking you to notice your feet. I'm asking you to notice sensations in the feet, tingling, numbness, heaviness, lightness, fullness, breadth, depth, the weight. So, what do you notice? And if you're using your seat, can you feel your pelvis move down into the seat? Which side do you tend to lean on? Right foot, right side of the pelvis, left side of the pelvis. So, just noticing what you're experiencing in this moment. And the body is breathing. You're just noticing that. Now imagine you opened a little door and walked inside your feet or walked inside the pelvis. Would you notice tension or tightness or ease or softness? Would there be a lot of blood flow, activity? So again, you get to use your imagination. What do you notice? Feeling that sense of groundedness, let's all take a deep breath in through the nose and a long sigh or exhale through the mouth, dropping your shoulders. And do that again. Breathe in through the nose and a long sigh. And imagine it draining out through the pelvis, through the feet, into the ground. And I always like to imagine that it's perhaps nourishing something underneath me. Now, bringing your attention back to the screen, what do you notice? What feels different or the same compared to a few moments ago? Feel free to type that into the chat box. But if we can move into sensation, it acts as a disruptor to our emotional response to things. Oftentimes, emotional response and trigger are used uh, as the same thing. And I would ask you today to experiment with information. So if you feel stress pop up or a situation happens, consider the reframe that it's information. So, what your body is telling you right now is information. Oh, I need to wiggle my feet because they feel tight and tense. Or I noticed by sitting that I maybe need to twist around or shrug my shoulders or take a big sigh. Yeah. So the second step of that is, what do I want to do with the sensation that I feel? What do I want to do with the sensation that I feel? So the steps of mindfulness, we want to be in the present moment, get really curious about the sensation. And then you can ask yourself, what do I want to do with the sensation? Some kind of movement. It could be a shrug. It could be a hug. It could be a shifting. It could be a sigh. It could be a walk around the block. It could be refocusing your attention or reframing. So, again, if you want to type in how that made you feel, I would love to hear. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. It wants me to share everything, and I think I just want to share the PowerPoint if I can. My voice is a little soft today, so I'll remember if I can to keep it up there we are. Perfect. All right. So hopefully, and you can type in the chat box that you are experiencing my screen here for the PowerPoint. And yeah, perfect. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, you can see the screen. Perfect. A little lower back pain. So now I'm sitting taller and the pain went away. Wow. How powerful is that? And anything that you can do to remind yourself that you have agency, that you have some amount of control over your physiological sensations, even if you experience chronic pain. The fact that you can pay attention, right, and notice, that is empowering. And that's also a sense of embodiment, a sense of, right, knowing that you inhabit the body that you have and you have some control over your experience in your body, even if it's just breathing, even if it's just the slightest movement or wiggle. That is powerful. Okay. So, how do we prevent burnout? And what do we do if we're already there? So, some of you expressed that you're already there. I think it's important to talk about some of the gentle definitions of it. So, in other words, as I'm saying this, if you have a physiological response and you've got a piece of paper, note it, or anything that is resonating with you. Because if we can differentiate some things, then you have more tools and resources to go about creating change. So, burnout is that emotional, mental, and often physiological exhaustion that's brought on by prolonged or repeated stress. Burnout is the key things. It's prolonged. It has to do with mental and emotional as well as physical exhaustion. And it could be one or the other. And it's this stress without relief. It's feeling like it's relentless. And it is often accompanied by a sense of like emptiness, numbness, also a sense of maybe hopelessness or apathy. And that's where burnout kind of tips over into compassion fatigue. They are different. So I often think about stress, and it is a definition from Brene Brown. Stress is like being in the weeds, and overwhelm is you can't see how to get out of the weeds, right? When stress is so excessive, you cannot think of the next step in which you would take to move out of those weeds. So if you are still able to make steps to move out of this stress, I would say maybe the verging on rather than being in burnout, that would be a useful definition. And now, what is stress? I think it's important to understand that there are differences there. So, stress is our body's response to day struggles, demands, situations. A little bit of stress is actually healthy because it helps us move into the part of our nervous system, which is the sympathetic part of the nervous system, meaning we have sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is the part of our body in which, and part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which can make decisions, can be creative, can be emotional, can be all of these things, can get excited about something. And stress can can be a good thing so that we can problem solve, so that we can play, right? So there is a difference between excitement and stress. And sometimes physiologically, they can feel very much the same. So we want to make sure, am I excited about this or am I anxious about this? And you get to ask, sometimes actually it might just be excitement rather than anxiety. Um, Stress symptoms can be physical. They can come in the form of, asthma, headaches, back pain, nausea, swelling. They can have emotional and cognitive responses such as anger or worry or irritability or um, decreased sex drive, memory issues. Stress can manifest in so many different ways. They can also have a behavioral thing like nail biting or grinding your teeth while you sleep, changes in appetite or digestion. They can also move you into procrastination, right? We can withdraw socially. We can also kind of fake it or mask things. And so they have a lot of behavioral responses. And they can also have a lot of chronic stress can develop into chronic symptoms, which I'm sure some of you might be aware either with yourself or if you're a caregiver, you might see how it has impacted the person that you care for. Um, yeah, good. I'll share my email again toward the end so that I'll send you all the recordings as well. Um, so stress and burnout, right? They're different. Stress is not a bad thing. It gets a really bad rap. It's when we feel our capacity does not meet the demands that are presented to us. And that's when stress can turn sideways and become things like burnout or compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue often happens in the caring world, right? With doctors, with caregivers, with therapists, with any time that you're a carer of something else, even at work, compassion fatigue can happen if you've got a job in which uh, the stress is no longer right. You're no longer to access a sense of compassion for the stress of others or the traumatic events of others. So a sense of apathy, a sense of withdrawal happens. It's often what in the caring world we call like a secondary trauma response. And when you feel a sense of numbness at your place of work or in responsibility and caring, that could tip over into that compassion fatigue. Um, Worry versus anxiety. I think it's important to delineate these as well. So anxiety is a symptom or could be a symptom of stress. It is also, right, a diagnosable thing, much like depression. I am not someone who tends to pathologize, but I think definitions are quite important. And if we are experiencing something of anxiety, it's typically something that's future focused. In other words, my brain says if I worry about it enough, then I'll come up with a solution because just by simply thinking about it. And anxiety can have other symptoms with it too, like avoidance. And then the anxiety builds until we're forced to do something, right? Which is a symptom of procrastination. But anxiety loves doing. So, one of the antidotes to anxiety is if I can think about what is possible and what is out of my control. And this is where worry comes in. Worry are things that are out of your control. I can't control the weather. I can't control even other people's behavior, but there may be something I can do. I could perhaps act with more empathy or kindness, and the other person might respond in kind. Versus if I act in anger, then I most likely am going to get some other kind of response from the other person, right? So, what is within your control? That would be a concern. A worry would be things that are just absolutely out of your control. So let's take a moment here. If you want to take your eyes just a little bit off the screen, And we'll just take a quick mindfulness break here with worry and concern. So closing your eyes or taking a gaze out, maybe in at something that looks like nature. So maybe you can spot something in your room that you're in, or can look out a window, or if you close your eyes, can soften and move internally. Whatever helps you focus best is fine. So again, when you shut out that sense or you soften your gaze, right, other senses light up. So you might notice that your body is tired. You might notice that your breathing feels shallow, or maybe it feels full. You might notice maybe an ache or a pain, and you can shrug your shoulders or wiggle a little bit to alleviate some of that pain if you like. But you're just simply noticing when we tune down a sense, the other senses in the bodies heighten. You might notice your hearing is a little stronger, unless you experience impairment there. You might notice maybe a little bit more of internal buzz, like can you feel circulation in the hands? Can you feel digestion happening? And as you're settling into just this sense of being with the body for a moment, finding a way to pause, pick something that has come up for you either today, yesterday, last week, last month, that doesn't feel like the most stressful thing. It's not a 10, maybe it's about a 5 on a scale of 0 to 10 of stress that you're worried about, you're concerned about. Um, my son just called me before this and he's on the road. So he's driving by himself. And so I said, "Ooh, honey, do you want to turn on your locator in case something happens and I can find you?" Right? And he said, "Nah, I got it, Mom. I got it. I have that satellite connect if something happens and my phone's fully charged." And I said, "Well, that's great." So that is an example of I was tipping over to worry about his driving, but I thought about what is possible here. So that's in the concern column. I can ask or offer to stay in connection. And he said, "No, I got it." So then it requires me, it tips back over into the worry column. It requires me to have an element of trust. So, can I be okay with uncertainty? So, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, and I'm noticing the difference. Concerns are things I can do, worries are out of my control. And then, what's my relationship to the worry? I don't throw my hands up, but I stay in my own body. I breathe, I notice. I ask, have I done everything that I can to alleviate the worry? Yeah, I offered. I know that his car is in good shape. We made sure, right? He's got a credit card for gas, like all these things. And then I can be in my own body. Yeah. So as you're reflecting on something that you're concerned or worried about, find which column it goes in. Think of one thing. Maybe you text that person, "I'm thinking of you today." Or maybe you go ahead and offer a hand, or you arrange for something. That is an action step. A worry, there's nothing you can do. Your loved one maybe is in assisted living. That requires some trust that they are going to do, that the staff will do what they need to do to take care of your loved one. What could you do that could tip it over to concern versus worry? Well, you can check in. You can provide things that they ask you to provide. You can stay engaged. Or, right, another way is those of you who have a strong faith, intercession, right? Some sort of prayer, some sort of wishing well. And in mindfulness, we work with meta meditation, wishing the other person a sense of embodied safety, health, and well being. And then notice how you feel. What do I notice now? Can I be with that discomfort of worry and not ingest it? In other words, if I've been drinking, I'm going to use an example of my beverage. If this is worry and I've been drinking it, can I instead keep it in the cup and set it beside me and be with it rather than inside me? It's a practice. All right. If you haven't already, bring your eyes back to the screen. So, worry versus concern. I'm curious how that was for you. I'm going to go ahead and come back to my presentation. You can type it into the chat box. And this is something I've said already. Anxiety says if I worry enough, right, I make all the right actions, I can prevent something from happening. That's a sense of like part of our thinking. We can't always believe our thoughts, right? We think if we can think our way through something, that we can prevent something, let the shoe to drop, for example. That's often something I hear. I think something bad is going to happen, and that is actually a way of thinking which is called catastrophizing. And I don't know how many of you can relate, but when we tend to tip over to thinking the worst, thinking all these scenarios, it's okay if we want to plan and we put it in the concern column. But if we stay in that thinking, it can cause that unnecessary stress, which causes our cortisol to rise. All right, so how do we heal from burnout? First, we admit something's not working right. There's something that's not working well, and we do a self check in. I'm going to share, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here in a second. There is a wonderful self-care assessment, and I'm going to go through that with you here in just a second. So as I move out of, there we are. As I move out of screen sharing that, I'm going to share this self-care assessment. So you can find this, and I'll copy it online, and I'll put it into the chat box right now. So if you'd rather view it like that, you can. It's therapistaid.com, or you can Google Therapist Aid self-care assessment. And we're going to go through this fairly quickly, so you can screenshot if you like, or again, you can go to that self-care assessment. So the ratings are: 1 is I do this pretty poorly. I rarely do it. 2 stars is I'm okay at this. I do this sometimes. 3 is I do this well. I do it often. So 1 is 2 is okay. 3 is pretty good. A flag is I really want to improve it more. Or you can simply circle it, or you can note it, jot things down. So I would encourage you, if it makes sense to you, to do either a screenshot or find the Therapist Aid self-care assessment later, so you're not having to take too many notes. You can also request the video later as well. And if you're watching this on video, you can hit pause. So how well do I do self-care? So why are we doing this? Because something is wrong. So we need to take an assessment, a closer look, a self-evaluation, a check-in with reality. Oftentimes, right, as a caregiver, we think, I do it, I got it, I can do all of it, I always have. And the reality is things change. Our bodies change, our situations change, our circumstances change. And sometimes it's just too much. So what are we doing to help ourselves? I'll also caveat this with self-care is not self-indulgence. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is not pampering. It could be, but it's not necessarily. It's much more about compassion, balancing, awareness, being flexible, having emotional intelligence. So let's take a look at our physical self-care. How well do you eat? So do I eat healthy foods? 1, is not a great. 2 is, yeah, I'm okay. 3 is I do this really well. Or do I want to make a note? This needs improvement. Personal hygiene, you know, uh, when we feel depressive symptoms, sometimes we don't shower enough, or um, we don't take care of the things that need to be what I call prehab or prevention care, like going to the dermatologist if you suspect something on your skin, you know, doing the things that would maybe prevent cavities, like regularly brushing your teeth because you're too tired at night. How well do I exercise? Am I exercising? So 1, 2, or 3. Do I wear clothes that help me feel good about myself? Or am I sort of, is my outer self a reflection of what I'm feeling on the inside? Do I eat regularly? Eating consistently and working with what works for you and your body. Most of you, right, have an idea of what works well and what doesn't. And am I at least tipping the scale on what I can do to not lose my energy? Participating in fun. Oh my goodness. Fun. We often think I'm a grown up. I don't need fun, or I don't deserve fun, or whatever the line of thinking is. But fun is a regular play, is a regular part of the antidote to burnout. So, what is it that provides actual fun or play for you? Do I get enough sleep? And I know if you are a caregiver and you are here, that you're probably constantly sleep deprived. Um, but how do I tip the scale to better sleep? Prevention. I mentioned this earlier in hygiene, medical appointments, checkups. Do I get enough rest when I'm sick? And what is my overall physical self care like? So you've made some notes here. We're going to go ahead and shift to the next section. Let's check in with our psychological and emotional self care. Do I take time off from work, school, or other obligations? Or do I always have to be on 100%? Is that really true? Do I participate in hobbies? So what brings you joy? Like what are those things that you did maybe in your earlier life or that you identify with? Maybe you like to sew or cook or garden. Um, Whatever those hobbies are that sort of uplift you. Um, I know in our house, we often keep a puzzle on the table, and even as we walk by, we might place one. And it's just this like mental break for me. It's like do I get away from distractions or am I always on? Do I have a plan for that? Do I learn new things unrelated to work or school? That learning mind, it's the reason why you're here today, right? So most of us do that if you're here today. Do I express my feelings in a healthy way? So what is my communication like? Um, do I recognize my strengths and achievements? I talked with someone recently that said, oh, as I look back and I'm in my late 70s, what have I done but be a mom? And then as she sat with that, she's like, oh, my kids call me. I feel validated. I have such a rich life of friends. So there was just this needing of looking at achievement differently as opposed to career oriented goals. Um, do I go on vacation or do I take days off? If that's not achievable, do I have minutes that I can unplug, that I can have this sort of mini vacation or staycation, that I'm pulling away from obligations? Do I do something comforting? Do I know how to self-soothe? Do I find reasons to laugh, talk about my problems? Would therapy be useful for you? Do you have a support group? Do you have a group of community that you can talk things through? Overall physiological and emotional self-care, how would you rate that? All right, we're going to move on to the next one. Social self-care. Do I spend time with people I like? Do I call or write to friends and family who are far away? I'm just thinking about you. Do I have stimulating conversations? What is that like? Do I meet new people? Am I open and vulnerable to meet new people? And also, am I open and vulnerable enough to greet someone, to notice my surroundings? Do I spend time alone with my partner? If I don't have a partner, do I spend time alone or quality time with the people that I care about? Can I ask for help when I need it? This is a big one for burnout. The capacity and the willingness to ask for help. And if you're not sure who to ask, there are organizations, there are support groups, there are things like this in which you can get and to cultivate resources. There are ways to connect with others. And I know we often think, well, I have to have capacity to connect. But actually, the opposite is true. We gain capacity when we connect and can lean on others. So it has a paradoxical effect. Do I have intimate time with myself or with a romantic partner? Do I keep in touch with old friends? What is my overall social self-care like? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Spiritual self-care. And this could be your religion. This could be, right, your faith. This could also be a sense of purpose and meaning in life. This could also be nature for you or oneness. Do I spend time in nature? Do I meditate or have pauses or stillness in my life? Do I pray or have a sense of intercession? We talked about earlier, there's a meta meditation. Do I wish someone good wishes or good health or well-being? Can I pause to do that? It's the opposite of worrying, right? I'm worried, worried, worried. Sometimes we say, oh, if you're someone who prays or has faith, oh, please give me the resources to help this person. Have you ever thought, oh, please give that person the resources they need? Please help that person so that you're not always the one. Do I act in accordance with my morals, my values, my purpose, my intention, my needs? Do I set aside time for thought and reflection, which is what this is today? And kudos to you for doing that. Do I participate in a cause that is important to me? Often we can identify those things based on our history and what has happened to us. And if you're not sure, it might be good for some reflection. And I've had this conversation with caregivers so much. They think, well, I can't give because I don't have enough time. But okay, what could you provide? A phone call, a one-time help. Um, uh, what is your capacity, and can you be clear about it when you volunteer or when you get involved in a group? When there is clarity, there is understanding. Do I appreciate art that is impactful for me? And this I would put under the umbrella of awe. Do we have an awe and a sense of wonder for the arts, for nature, for um, uh, paintings, for sculpture, for the sky, for the universe, right? For music, for film, for all of these different things, books, these things that enrich our lives. And when we say we don't have time, I understand that. But if you have a maladaptive strategy for soothing, maybe you Netflix and chill for a whole weekend when you have free time, or maybe um, there is a habit in which, right, that has been a way that you've coped that is no longer serving you. This would be, right, a replacement behavior for that. Last time we talked about STIRBs, which are those strategies, um, uh, basically strategies for energy relieving behaviors. And so sometimes they're not great, and sometimes too much is too much. And so how do we find the constant sense of balancing? And that's what self-awareness does. All right, so I'm gonna pause here and stop my sharing. I would be curious if there's one thing that struck you out of that self-assessment. So part of alleviating burnout is to be able to get an accurate self-assessment and an accurate read on where I am. What is my self-awareness in this moment in time? Not always where do I want to be, where was I, but where am I am today in this moment. And my favorite question to ask every morning, what is possible today? It might just be only one thing, or it could be that I need a rest, right? I need a softness. We think we must do it all. Or maybe you have the opposite. Maybe you think, I can't do it anymore. And so, what needs to be let go of and released or redistributed? How do you ask for help when you need help? I'm going to share my screen again. And as I do that, please do share with me how that self assessment went for you. Was it like, ooh, ouch, I've got a lot to work on, or oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing maybe better than I thought. I have much more than the 3 category than I do the 1 category. So see if you can get a feel for where you are in this moment. So the other element of healing through burnout is connection and communication. So how we communicate and interact with others have a tremendous effect on our capacity to handle things, how other people interact with us. How do we develop a sense of community or support groups? So that would be something to reflect on. We did some earlier sessions on boundaries. And if you want that video, I'll send that to you. If you send me an email, I'll get that one out. But it is really, really powerful and also one of the keys of healing burnout. And in that self assessment, can we be as reliable to ourselves or more so than to others? Can we be as reliable to ourselves or more so than we are to others? That would be an indicator of healthy self boundaries. Self care versus collective care. So, self care, right, is, as I said before, not self indulgent, but it encompasses all of these things, including self compassion. And collective care is allowing others to lighten our load. And then when we have more capacity, we can help lighten other people's loads. So that collective care piece is super important. All right. So let's do a little mindfulness exercise on self-compassion. It is a key component to burnout. I'm going to see if I can pause our sharing here. Yeah. Someone wrote in the chat box, I have ebbs and flows, and today I need to do more self-care. Yeah. So I have a whole theory on balancing that I may have shared with you all before, but good to hear again, that any single point in our day, in our life, doesn't need to be balanced. I know, you're welcome for the free pass. But it's a constant state of balancing. So if over a period of a day, I've done many things, or a week, or a month, or a season, or even a year, that would be, right, more doable than thinking I have to check off the list every day, or all of these things need to be done this week. It's just not possible. You're a human. And so if we can instead think of it a little bit more like if you ever played on a seesaw as a kid, that we're constantly shifting in our roles. As caregiver, we might have that role one day, and then we might have another role, daughter, partner, sibling, worker. And we're just constantly working between all of these different identities and roles. but they do not need to be fully balanced at any one time. It's a constant balancing. So I would ask you, what is in your hand? So this will be our mindfulness exercise. Go ahead and take your hands into a fist. And it represents all of the things that you are doing right now as maybe a parent, a sibling, a worker, a partner, a caregiver, you name the identity, all these different hats you wear. These are all the things you're doing. What right now in any of those roles could I put down? And then slowly release the grip of one hand and imagining placing it on the floor. And then take that empty hand and cup your hand. Place the other hand and hold it, softening your grip. So whatever that is, that doesn't have to be done today, you put it on the floor. The other things that need to be done, you're holding it with the other hand. How does that feel? What do you notice? I notice my hand got really soft. So there is a sense of like, I've got you. There's a sense of caring and nurturing. And then lower your hands if they're not already. Rest them on your lap. Drop your shoulders. Take a full breath in. And like you're breathing out through a straw, exhale. And do that again. Breathe in. And breathe out as if you're breathing through a straw. Relax both hands if you're holding, right? Whatever it is you're holding, you have to do today, whatever you put down, drop both arms by your side. And notice what that feels like. Just for this moment, doesn't need to be done in the next few minutes. Just for this moment, put it down. You can pick it back up later, but just for this moment. Then shrug your shoulders, wiggle a little bit. Yeah. What did you notice about that holding exercise? Oftentimes we're gripping and we don't even notice it. We're gripping our jaw, our teeth, our shoulders, our hands, our identity, our doingness. And if you can, imagine all the doing you do and lighten it and hold it and soften it. Yeah, someone said, feeling a lightness that came over me when I let it go. Yeah. The phrase let it go often can make us want to hold tighter because we say, oh no, only I can do it the best. Or they don't know how to do it. It would take so much time for me to teach them, right? Yes, it takes time to teach others what you probably do very, very well. And yes, you have to let go of perfection and the idea that only you could do it. But the investment in teaching someone else and continuously teaching them or upholding a boundary with it will ultimately give you more of that time to take care of self, to decrease burnout. Yeah. Someone said it moves to other areas within the body. So when you let go of tension in the hands, it moves. That's okay. That's great that you notice that. So what that means is you're beginning to develop a vocabulary and an understanding of where things go in the body. And when you can get very curious about it, curiosity is an element of mindfulness, you have the ability to change it. You have the ability to notice it. Oh, someone said, I feel guilty. Yeah. So guilt, the definition of guilt, I am doing something wrong. Is that true? Is it wrong to have self-care so that you can then therefore care for others? Is what you feel guilty about, is that true? Have you truly done something? Now, if the answer to that is yes, you have to make like, right, there's a need for making amends. Maybe something was said not nice, or maybe an action was taken that you regret. Making amends would make sense. But if there is inherent guilt for your way of being, not being able to get it all done, that you should, the word should's a big clue that should and guilt are interconnected, meaning they're often thoughts that aren't true. Or like if we say, I should have self-care, it means kind of tells me you don't really want to. Like you want to keep being the one who does it all. And that often is your identity as a caregiver, or our identity when we think that we need to carry the load all by ourselves. But if burnout is there, if you're on the verge of burnout, having that good reality check of that self assessment and seeing where you can navigate what is possible would help alleviate some of that guilt. So I hope that was helpful for you. Um, let's go back to my screen. All right. So self-care, we already talked about that. All right. Whoa. So we just did our exercise in compassion. So the definition of compassion is that offering of kindness, and it typically has an element of doing, but it's when we can reflect in ourselves a moment in which we have experienced something similar with the other person. So that's empathy. It's empathy in action. Empathy in action. Sometimes what's required is just being with, companioning, pausing, noticing. In other words, the other person might not even need to be fixed or want to be fixed. They might just need your presence or your availability or well wish. Oftentimes, we think we need to do something for someone else to alleviate our own discomfort. That's not compassion. That's right, self soothing and involving someone else. So, really evaluating compassion. How can I turn that kindness toward myself through an act of self care? So then, therefore, I can care for others. We can heal burnout by increasing our emotional intelligence. Can you identify your feelings? And I mean more than happy, angry, sad, like irritation. Oh, that's information. Or fear. Oftentimes, right, anxiety can progress because we want to avoid really hard things and it shows up as fear. So, can you identify or have a multifaceted vocabulary on feelings? Can you identify your needs? We talked about this in our boundary session. When we can identify what our needs are, then we can better communicate what is okay for me and what is okay for you. And porous boundaries can lead to burnout. Porous boundaries is when we put other people's needs over ourselves and we people please, right? Essentially. So being able to dial in what you actually need and want and what your values are. I value integrity. I value peace. I value uh, wonder. I value purpose. I value, right? There's millions of values. So when you can identify those three things, burnout can go from up here to here because then you have a path forward to the antidote. If you ignore it, suppress it, that's when burnout stays up here and we can't find the path out of the weeds. Self-awareness or sense of self. Who am I without all the doing? Who am I without all the caregiving? Who are you? What do you enjoy? What do you enjoy? What brings you joy? I would love for you to jot that down or put it in the chat box. We talked about boundaries, and there's 3 actionable steps you could take today. Um, Conscious restorative breaks throughout the day. Standing up, stretching takes about 2 seconds, or rolling your shoulders, looking out the window, putting the phone down for a minute. That would be one thing. Saying no to something, anything, anything you can think of to say no to that isn't already on your plate, that someone else could do, someone else could be qualified for, that someone else might have the opportunity to serve that has the capacity. You don't have to say yes to everything. Can you be flexible? Meaning, those of us that have really strong or walls as boundaries can also have burnout because we think it can only be done a certain way and it has to be so structured. But if you can be a little more flexible, then you can find, right, some release on that burnout. Interdependence. So healthy boundaries are are not codependent, meaning if you're not okay, I'm not okay. And if I'm not okay, you're not okay. That would be more codependence. Interdependence is I'm okay even when you're not okay. I know in my body I'm okay, but I can comfort you or companion you or be with you, but not take on all of your stress. And I know that I can turn to a friend, a partner, and rely on the person because I've developed a relationship with them that is about interdependence and finding each other's values and needs. If this feels really foreign to you, I'm going to refer back to that boundary session, which I think was really useful. And in the beginning of the grief session we did 2 weeks ago, I did a little recap of the boundaries. And it could be something that maybe requires a little more self reflection. How to become more interdependent versus if this person's acting out, then I got to act out with them, or I have to get angry because they're angry, or I have to run away because they're angry. So, those are things to really start to evaluate and find. Again, the antidote is finding that pause so you can get mental clarity on what you actually want and need and value. I'm going to check my chat box. Oh, saying no is being kind to myself. It is self care. Yes, you got it. We talked about balancing life. So, my challenge for you this week, among these other things, is can you do something that is unattached to any goal? It's not gonna, you don't need to be good at it. Maybe it's trying something new for the first time. And how do we find that thing? Well, what brought you joy in the past and what brings you joy today? So let's finish by imagining that thing that brings you joy. For me, I live close to the mountains, so it's picturing the mountains. I don't even need to be in it, I can just picture it. Another thing that brings me joy is petting my dog and loving on him and having him love on me. Another thing that brings me joy is connecting with my best friend and hearing about the great things going on in her life. Another thing that brings me joy is listening to music, taking time to listen to a single song. It's only 3 minutes. And I get a really nice release from that. So as you close your eyes or take your eyes off the screen, what in the past has brought you joy or what would bring you joy today? Just imagine yourself doing that. I'm picturing the mountains and I can feel already, maybe what you can hear like, there's a sense of softness in my body. There's a softness in my voice. Whatever it is you're imagining, see if you can now embody it. Do I feel less tension? Do I feel lighter? Is there more ease? And when you're ready, open your eyes. Yeah, I love some of you have added working on a textile art brings me joy. You don't have to do it all day. Maybe it's just 5 minutes. Maybe it's thinking about what project you might do next. I found joy in planting an avocado pit and see it grow. Yeah. Collage. I took time for myself this weekend to do a watercolor painting. Gosh, so many of you are artists. I love this. It could just be saying no to something that'll bring you some relief and joy. Um, yeah. Someone has raised their hand. Are you able to add it into the chat box? If you can add your question to the chat box, that would be wonderful. Yeah. So I hope today that this has given you some thoughts and ideas, and I'd love to hear in the chat box as you're departing some ways in which you will implement the things that we've discussed today. And I'm also curious to hear from you if you really, I asked you the question, are you in burnout? And maybe some of you have reevaluated. Well, I'm not quite there yet. I'm in the weeds, I'm stressed, but I can see a way out. Or after today, you're able to see a way out. That is my hope. And that brings us to the last element of the antidote to burnout, which is hope. If you can find some anchor of hope somewhere in the future, it doesn't have to be here today, but you're slowly pulling yourself toward that anchor, baby steps toward it. There is a way out. Yeah, someone put going for a walk. Others of you, I'm not sure what that one means that you just put in there. All right. So I look forward to seeing you all next time. I'm going to put in the chat box the link to register for the next session, which is in 2 weeks. So if you're watching this live, you'll click on this link and register for the next session. Hopefully, you can email me if you want a copy of these. Um, uh, and I've put my email address there. And I look forward to seeing you all again in 2 weeks for our last session of the series. If you loved it, tell me about it so AARP will bring me back again, because it is truly a gift to share this with you all. Thank you all. I so appreciate you. Have the most beautiful day. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. I'll stay just for another second if anyone has any other questions, but Jennifer, you could probably stop the recording.